On a lighter note now, people, let us speak about what's going on in the world globally, as far as the globalists' intention is. Now, for those of you that know anything about the World Economic Forum, you will have heard a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And, you will have heard that you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And there's going to be this universal income for the millions of people that don't have jobs. And the accommodation which we live in is going to be apartment block varieties with 30 square metres of living space for a family. And all of the energy is going to be centrally controlled, so it will be rationed to you. So, and of course then all the cars off the road and nobody allowed to go into the countryside because we've got to protect the countryside from vermin, like the human being. You see, so they've got a whole bunch of stuff going, and you'll be penalised and, probably even incarcerated if you don't comply with recycling regulations. And they're going to monitor how much alcohol you buy. Of course, they're going to completely eradicate tobacco. And if you don't believe this is true, then all you've got to do is look at China. And China is already well on the way to doing much of this stuff. And so when they are bringing in all of these swarthy, fighting Asian men, it makes us nervous, doesn't it? Of course it makes us nervous. And then it makes us even more nervous when we discover that they seem to be at liberty to do whatever they want with our children and women. And the laws are bending over backwards to provide for their safety against ours. Well, on the face of it, something is very, very evil about that, isn't it? And so you've got people like Alex Jones and David Icke who don't seem to have any doubt about the evil of what's going on. But I tend to be more open-minded, and I realise that the human being is a failed creature and very often stupid and don't really know what they're doing. And who's to say that the powers that be are really any more intelligent than the average Joe. And just because they've got money, it doesn't mean that they are, super intelligent. Because all you got to do, you just got to listen to, Bill Gates. You listen to Elon Musk. You listen to George Soros. You listen to those sort of people, and Klaus Schwab and everything, the big kingpin of the World Economic Forum. You listen to them and you think, well, they don't sound any more intelligent than any other reasonable intellectual, to be fair. And they're not impressing upon me anything of any value which is going to make me confident in what they're doing. Now, obviously, look, to have a greener world, okay, we're going to need a greener world. To take combustion engines off the road, I think is a good thing. Replace them with electric. But I think the idea is that they don't want any vehicles on the road, really, except theirs and ones of great necessity. And, the troubling thing about these people is that not only are they highly intent on getting all the traffic off the road to reduce congestion, it's not just about the pollution. It is about the congestion. It's about the actual resources of millions and millions of cars, every family owning 2 cars and all this sort of thing. Well, where's all this stuff coming from? There isn't an endless pit really on the earth of, certain resources. And so they're not infinite. And so it's kind of like, well, at some stage, they're going to run out. And so they're making provisions for that now. But what they're not doing, they are not putting in what we would expect to be very, very adequate alternative transport. Now, in some countries, China, one of the best rail systems on the planet, Hong Kong. I've been to Hong Kong a couple of times. I've travelled on their electric train. It was like going into the future. You know, this monorail that just flies around the Hong Kong Bay in complete silence and talks to you in several languages, and it's just like some sort of incredible super space cab of luxury when you're travelling on it. A wonderful experience. And so they're not making those things. If they're making those things, you know, where is this electric monorail in the UK? You know, you think we would start with the M1. The M1, they would be building, or at least have plans to build a super highway for a train along the M1. You know, the foundation's already laid, and I suppose when they start to reduce the amount of traffic on the road, then they can actually close down some of the lanes to enable them to do this at the same time as traffic still travelling on the other lanes, i.e. just vehicles, wagons delivering goods, and only people with a very important reason to go travelling, up and down the motorways. But they're not telling us that they're doing it for any wonderful reasons. They're not giving us the blueprint. You know, you would have thought they would have, promotional movies of a vision of the future. Look, people, the reason why we're doing this, the reason why we want all the cars off the road, the reason why we want to stop you eating meat, because, first and foremost, the methane, apparently from the cows' arseholes, depletes the ozone. But not only that, it's cruel. And there's lots of other sources that we can get our protein from. All we need to do is to have a shift in education. After all, China eat just about everything on the planet. They will eat everything. They eat moths, butterflies, locusts, scorpions, everything. They just fry them in fucking oil and butter. Maybe add a bit of salt, sugar to them, and they're a delicacy. And so it's just a cultural thing. It's just being born into these cultures to find it acceptable. Where us in the West, we don't find anything acceptable unless it's nice and clean and pure and pink and in a cellophane fucking packet. And so that's how detached we've become from nature. And so we don't have this electric alternative transport infrastructure in place. All they've done is made a few fucking buses electric. And, who in their right mind is going to be getting on one of these buses, which stops at every single bus stop, and will take you just an hour to travel like 4 or 5 miles. It's shocking. I just simply would never ever do it. I would never ever do it. And so I'm pretty sure anyone that's had the car all their lives isn't about to do that either. But if we had amazing monorails with buffets on and maybe sleeping cabins whereby we could just pay a small price, just to rest for an hour or two during our busy commuting or something like this, then okay, it becomes much more humane, doesn't it? But they're not providing this for us. They're just taking away without giving back. And so it seems to me that they don't intend actually to give us all these wonderful infrastructures, because they have these smart cities. They have the 15-minute city, whereby you can't travel anywhere outside of the location you live further than 15 minutes. And if you don't have a car, well, you're walking or you're on a bicycle or something like that. So how far actually can you get in 15 minutes? So that's exactly their intention, people. And you see all these houses like this, they don't want any of them in existence anymore. They want you living in places like they do in China. In China, these huge companies, they build their own living accommodation. In actual fact, these companies build mini cities. Now, when they've got these massive factories with thousands and thousands of people working in them, you know, all standing to attention like this they do in the morning. Then they get the briefing, and then they walk in certain lines, and then they all filter off into their little pigeon or chicken hooches or whatever. Everything is super regimented, and you can't get up from your station without, you know, being desperate. You want to go to the toilet, and then they'll chastise you or give you points against you because you should have gone to the toilet before. You know, you're failing in your production obligation and all these sort of things. But outside of these factories, people, they've got these monorails, and people travel on the monorails like literally 5 minutes from their super high-rise living accommodation. And in these super high-rise living accommodation, you've got whole floors given to gyms, to swimming pools, to cinemas, to discos, to all these things that the human being relishes. And so they provide all of that within their smart cities. And I saw interviews with you know, Chinese people being interviewed, and they say, well, they're great. You've got everything you need. You don't have the smell, the fog, the congestion. You go to work, you do your job, and then, you know, you leave your job. 5 minutes, you're back home, and then on the floors in the building, you go to the disco, or you go to the leisure centre, and, you know, all these little sorts of things. And so the Chinese are simply years ahead of us in the West, and it's been promoted that, you know, they're the communist ones and they're the evil ones, and we shouldn't trust them, and this, that, and the other. But the people I saw being interviewed by Western people, so one would think that it was quite genuine, and it wasn't a propaganda movie, you know, by the CCP. It was a British media company who just wanted to see how these smart cities function, and the people they spoke to were all very content. They were happy with all that stuff, but they were young people, you see. And so what I'm saying here is that it's only the old people that have objection to the way the world's changing. Now, if you listen to David Icke is always saying, the young people, they don't know what they have taken away from them. But me, I was born in 1952, and I can see all the freedoms that have been taken away from me. Well, yeah, because you were born then. But people born now, they're born into a certain epoch where they have never known anything else. And the human being is a very adaptable creature. And if they are born into an environment, then they just accept it. And if there's no history, books and movies telling people about the beautiful utopia that used to be on the planet, then nobody's going to be none the wiser, are they? And to be fair, I don't even think that they would think that that's a beautiful utopia. They'd go, oh, all those bushes and trees and all those bugs, things that can bite you and things that can prickle you. Oh no, I would never want to. I like to watch it sometimes on the big screen, but I would never want to go into those places. No, look at the kids these days. They don't want to go out in nature. They just want to, you know, if they could, they'd sit with a virtual reality headset on, you know, 24 hours a day. You know, their version of escapism. They don't want this world. They don't want this natural world. They don't want this busy, noisy world. They want their own seclusion. They want their own fantasy. They want to be able to create whatever world they want at the touch of the buttons, which is, you know, Zuckerberg's metaverse. And so, you know, the old dogs have just got to die off. Unlike one famous philosopher, you know, stated that, you know, the only time you're ever going to get a paradigm shift is when, you know, the old train of thought literally dies, and that dies with the people that have those thoughts. So it's a simple transition, really. It's just out with the old and in with the new. And so, to look at the world, let's say in 50 years' time, if there are very, very few cars on the roads, then there wouldn't be a necessity for the roads. There would just be these monorails which go all around the villages, all around the towns and cities. And you'd get on those and you'd go to wherever you're going to go. But you see, if they're building on the Chinese model, then there'd be no reason to travel in any case, because you'd all be living within a building which has absolutely everything that you are requiring. They even have botanical gardens in these places, people. They have whole floors given to these beautiful Zen gardens where you can go and chill out. You know, so it's pretty advanced stuff. And so I think really in the West we've got a lot to learn. And you know, for instance, now I've just walked the best part of a mile to go to the supermarket, and I've got 12 kilos on my back. Not everyone can do that. Not everybody wants to do that. I personally want to do it because I love the working out. I love getting out in the nature. I don't like listening to the traffic. I actually hate listening to the traffic. I hate it being here. I, for one, will be very, very happy when all these combustion engines are gone. And so, because why? It's going to serve me. I don't want a car. I don't need a car. I don't like cars. And okay, in the past when I was younger, I made great use of cars. But it's horses for courses, people. A car did give me, a great amount of freedom to travel all around the country and into other countries to see things and experience. And if your travel is limited, then okay. That isn't so great, but if they provide for you like they do in these Chinese cities, if you have all this wonderful stuff that you've been born into and you don't know anything else, and you don't want to travel to go and walk in the forest, and you don't want to go and walk with your trousers rolled up on the beach, and if you just want all the comforts of city life, then way to go for most people. And I think when people are born into that, then more and more are going to find it perfectly acceptable. And people like me, are going to be longing for the trees. Oh my goodness, just to be with a tree, just to feel a tree, just to stand under a tree in the shade and have a look around and, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And to smell the different changes of the seasons and all that sort of thing. Well, that's because I grew up in that realm. But people being born into these smart cities and everything, they've never known it. And so it's alien to them, so they don't need it. So it's horses for courses, people. The powers that be are heading towards a different world, a very, very different world. But if you look back now to, like say, medieval times, we've come a long way, haven't we? And we've greatly increased our comfort and our longevity, our health and all different sorts of things. It's been exponentially increased. It's doubled life expectancy and things like that. And so, who's to say that our life expectancy won't increase in these new worlds? Because we won't die of car crashes. We won't die of, many of the silly things that people die from, like falling off roofs, falling off scaffolds, cutting limbs off with electric saws, and there's a billion things that affect the human being, and so people won't be dying from those things. And I'm pretty sure that diets will be controlled, because if any of you have seen these Black Mirror episodes whereby you're only allowed to take certain amount of calories, and you're just not permitted to buy any more. You go to the supermarkets and things, and they allow you half a litre of a spirit, a pound of meat, little bit of cheese, and the rest of it is all bound to keep you within the parameters of a healthy living, and the amount of calories that you need. And these electronic devices, which your chips, you can't get away with it. And also I've seen something whereby the blood sugar level is monitored, and it says like your blood sugar level is too high, you need to restrict this in your diet. This futuristic stuff, people, and I don't doubt that it's all coming about. And so I don't know whether we have to wonder or worry about our health, because if no one's got jobs and everyone's going to be getting fat, well, I think they'll probably have that under control. I don't even know whether they'll start to implement some level of coercion, just like they do in the Chinese factories. They get everybody standing there doing all these exercises to get the blood pumping and to stop them from being lethargic, and to inspire them into performing their tasks and all this, because they don't want lethargy, they don't want people disinterested, and so they motivate them like that, and then they have their propaganda going all the time and things like that. Anyway, there's much to be said about that, and I'm going to be... I have actually tried to look on the World Economic Forum, but there's only so much you can see without paying, and I think last time I looked it was about $20 or euros or whatever a month, and I wasn't prepared to pay that, but I think I'll pay it one-off so I can actually see what their vision is, because it is absolutely massively exponential. What they have got in the blueprint, what they're not telling us really. And is it they're not telling us because they know we don't like change, and they don't want us to be all disgruntled about it. They're just slowly bringing it in, surreptitiously. They don't want any revolutions and this, that and the other, because they don't think we'll understand. So they think we're too stupid to move into this new world, and they're probably right. And so they're just doing it. They're just moving into this new world. So, just before I finish this video, I walked past here this morning, and I saw an elderly gentleman. He was about 60 years old, standing smoking a fag, contemplative, looking at this grave. Brother. And I'm thinking, well, what is he thinking? Brother, I miss you, brother. Thinking about all the things they did in younger years, and all the fights they had, and maybe feeling some guilt, maybe remembering the great times they had, feeling a loss, feeling many different sorts of emotions, feeling a variety of bewilderment. What is this thing called life? He's dead, I'm still standing here, living. It could have been me. What if it was me? What would my brother be thinking, standing at my grave? Would he be thinking, glad that cunt's gone? Would he have tears streaming down his face? What do people think? What is the bereaving process? Bereaving, grieving. What is that process? We're all affected in different ways to different degrees, of course, depending on how close we were and how emotionally attached we were to these people. But it for sure can leave us feeling very, very empty, very disillusioned, asking huge metaphysical questions. What the fuck is this thing about? And depending on how tragic the death was, if it was a young person and died tragically, you really would question the nature of God and things like that. And then, he's not here anymore now, this particular chap, and the one that was standing by his grave, he's walked away and he's continuing his life, and he's going to be carrying the thoughts and the remembrances of this person for the rest of his life. And whether he'll actually get a significant resolve on it, whether he's content and comfortable with where his brother spirit has gone, whether he's an atheist and he's just that you eat shit, you live and die, who knows? But there's a whole myriad of things that we can contemplate. And to live next door to a graveyard and to see it in action, to see new graves all the time, and funeral processions, then it's a stark reminder, And of course, I'm always in the churchyard over there with tombstones all around me, and I've always had a kinship with death, and I think that was brought about because the death of my mother happened when I was so young, and that brought about the very, very stark reality of this reality. And when things like that happen, to a 4-year-old child, it gives rise to a great deal of contemplation and questions and philosophical thoughts and anger and bewilderment and judgment and all these sorts of things. And they mould the character that we become. People who are losing people later in life isn't anything like as impactful as when you lose people very close to you when you're young, siblings or parents. Or if you lose a very young child, oh my God. We can all think of scenarios that we've heard about in the news, how young children died in very, very tragic and disturbing ways, which people would never ever recover from. There was one incident that I read about, 20 years ago. It was about this 3-year-old girl who died in the garden of her grandmother. Now, the child was permitted to go outside into the garden to play on the climbing frame. She probably did many times before, whilst grandmother was in the house, cooking or doing whatever she was doing, not paying too much attention, maybe having a quick look to see if she's alright, thinking, what harm can come to her? Until one time she looked out the window and then she saw the little girl hanging by her neck in the climbing frame. And it turned out that the little girl had her handbag, which she was wearing, ravelled up in the climbing frame, and she ended up slipping and hanging herself. How would that grandmother deal with that? I don't know whether I could deal with that. You're facing your daughter or your son when you hold that responsibility. I don't know how anybody could deal with that. It would absolutely, completely ruin the relationship between your son or daughter, because there would always be that massive, massive guilt. And every time you looked at each other, you'd both be thinking it. You'd absolutely both be thinking it. And it would just be hugely destructive. And so, if you're looking for the notion of a God, then you have to ask yourself, why do we need these lessons? Why have we been given this facility to feel so much pain, so much destruction, so devastating to our souls, that very often we take our own lives as a result of it, because we just, all of a sudden, we don't see any beauty in life anymore. We can't imagine facing people anymore. And so if this life experience is supposed to be a benefit, and we've all got to experience these tragedies, to what aim? To what aim, people? To make us hard as iron? To make us absolutely dull and numb to love, life, and loved ones and loved things, because we know it's only a matter of time then they're going to be taken away from us. So without a doubt, when I look at my own psyche, I have a residue of bitterness for this life, with all of the people that have been close to me that I've lost. And for what reason? To enable me to feel bitterness, which one day I should get a resolve on and have it dissolve and melt away, and then I just have a level of acceptance. Is that what this thing's about? To break our balls? To crush us in every single facet of what it is to be a human being, just to break our spirit into a level of acceptance that God is great? I say fuck God. Seriously, I say fuck God. Because, to be honest, I think there's other ways which we could feel, which would enable us to praise God. If God was more lovely, more caring and less evil, and if everything around us was wonderful, and nobody suffered these hideous experiences and, ends in their lives, then we go, praise God. What a wonderful God, and His creation is wonderful. But to be honest, His creation isn't wonderful in many respects, is it? It's very evil. And when you read the Old Testament, you can see that that particular God is evil from beginning to end. Absolutely through and through evil. And those of you that think that, I've got a little bit of a bee in my bonnet about Christians and the old God and this, that and the other, well, if you educated yourselves about this, people, then I think you too would also have a very similar perspective if you weren't so stupid and indoctrinated into these belief systems. Because when you look at it, it's one hellish can of worms. An absolute hellish mindfuck can of worms. And entirely designed to fuck with your heads. And just to keep you in a state of nothingness, whereby you're questioning what is true, what is reality, what is love, why is there hate and evil, and all this sort of stuff. And nobody's ever worked it out. And if you want to get any respite on it, then you just have to live like a monk, a nun, or, a Buddhist, detached from everything. You don't have children, you don't have partners, you don't have friends. Why? Because they're only all going to cause you suffering in the end. Because they're all going to die, they're all going to suffer, and they're all going to bring their suffering to you, and they're all going to want you to share their suffering. And so, like the Buddha said, what the fuck? The Four Noble Truths. It's suffering, 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 suffering. Why we suffer, how we suffer, how not to suffer, and what actually is suffering. That's the Four Noble Truths, people. And that's it. Yeah. Why are we cursed into this dimension? Well, if you read gnostics literature, they'll tell you that your soul is trapped. It's trapped by evil God, Yahweh. And the soul design is to make you suffer, and to never allow your spirit to escape his evil dimension. Read the Gnostics, people. Open your minds and have some sort of an idea what might be going on in this dimension.